You hear the rain before you feel it. A hard, steady roar against leaves, stone, and earth. At first, it seems harmless. Then the fire starts shrinking. The smoke turns low and weak. Water runs through the entrance of the shelter, and the ground beneath you becomes mud. One day passes, then another. You are hungry now. The tracks outside are gone, the river is rising, the wood is wet. Every dry place nearby is already being used by something else. For you, a week of rain means cancelled plans. For an ancient human, it could mean cold hunger, injury, predators, and a fire that might never come back. So what did people do when the sky refused to clear? They did not simply wait. They turned bad weather into work. But first, they had to survive the first few hours. The most immediate danger was not drowning, it was getting wet. A human body loses heat far faster when water strips away the warm air trapped near the skin. Even in temperatures that do not feel extreme, wet clothing, wind, and exhaustion can push the body toward hypothermia. Your fingers become clumsy, your judgment slows. You stop making good decisions before you realize you are in trouble. For ancient people, staying dry was not comfort, it was survival. So the group moved deeper into a cave, beneath a rock overhang, or into a shelter covered with hides, branches, grass, and bark. The goal was simple: stop moving air and stop falling water. But shelter alone was not enough. The fire had to live. Today, fire is a match, a lighter, or a button. For much of prehistory, it was a resource you protected. Evidence from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa suggests that human ancestors were using fire deep inside a cave around 1 million years ago. Other sites show repeated controlled fire use hundreds of thousands of years later. But keeping fire and making fire are not the same skill. A group might know how to feed a flame, move embers, and preserve coals without being able to create a new fire whenever it wanted. That made a rainstorm terrifying. If the fire died, the group lost heat, light, cooked food, protection, and the center of the shelter all at once. So someone watched it, not for 10 minutes, for hours. They fed it small pieces of dry fuel. They split damp wood to reach the drier interior. They searched beneath thick branches, inside dead trunks, under bark, and deep within the shelter for anything that would still burn. The fire became a patient, and the entire group depended on whether it survived the night. Once the flames were stable, another problem appeared. No one could go far. Rain erased tracks, softened slopes, filled streams, and made rocky ground dangerous. One bad fall could damage an ankle or leg badly enough to end a person's ability to hunt, so movement slowed. And when movement slowed, hands became busy. Look at the floor of many prehistoric caves and rock shelters, and you find the remains of work: broken stone, tiny flakes, bone fragments, pigment dust, tools in different stages of completion. These places were not simply bedrooms, they were workshops. Imagine sitting close to the fire while rain hammers the ground outside. You pick up a stone core, strike it, turn it, strike again. One wrong blow ruins hours of work. A good tool requires patience, and bad weather gives you something dangerous life rarely offers: uninterrupted time. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, people were processing ochre around 100,000 years ago. They ground pigment, mixed materials, and used shells as containers. At Sibudu, researchers found evidence of ochre processing and carefully constructed plant bedding tens of thousands of years old. That tells you something important. Ancient shelter life was organized. People did not just collapse in the dark until the weather improved. They maintained the place. They cleaned. They prepared materials. They made the ground safer to sleep on. At Sibudu, layers of grasses and sedges were arranged as bedding, and some plants may have helped repel insects. Old bedding was sometimes burned, clearing pests and preparing the space for a fresh layer. That is not random survival. That is household management, and the longer the rain lasted, the more valuable indoor work became. Hides could be scraped, edges could be sharpened, broken points could be replaced. Cordage could be twisted from plant fibers. Clothing could be repaired. A small tear in a hide garment might not matter on a warm day. In cold rain, it could become a channel that carries water directly against the skin. String was especially important. It tied stone points to shafts. It held shelters together. It made carrying nets, traps, snares, and bundles possible. A short piece of twisted fiber found at Abri du Mara in France shows that Neanderthal were making cordage more than 40,000 years ago. Rope rarely survives. That tiny fragment probably represents an enormous invisible technology that archaeology usually loses, and rainy days would have been perfect for making it. Slow work, repetitive work, work you could do while the outside world became unusable. But there was another reason people stayed busy: food. A week of rain did not pause hunger. If hunting stopped, the group had to live on what it already had: dried meat, stored fat, nuts, roots, shellfish, anything gathered before the storm. This is where preparation separated a difficult week from a deadly one. A group that had preserved food could wait. A group that had not might be forced outside too early. And the first clear hour after heavy rain could change everything. The ground became soft, tracks became deep. Broken plants, hoofprints, dragged feet, and fresh mud could reveal exactly what had moved through the landscape. Rain erased yesterday's trail, then it created tomorrow's map. Water also changed what food was available. Roots became easier to dig from softened earth. Mushrooms appeared, insects emerged, termites swarmed in some environments, pools filled, streams that had been dry began moving again. To survive rain, ancient people needed more than endurance. They needed knowledge of what the landscape became after water touched it. But the most important work may not have been physical at all. Imagine 20 people inside the same shelter. No one can leave. The fire is low. Children are restless. The rain has been falling for 3 days. What happens? People talk. They explain. They argue. They remember. Nighttime firelight creates a different kind of conversation. Research among Zhu Huanzi communities found that daytime talk often focused on practical concerns, while conversations around evening fires shifted more toward stories, songs, and shared traditions. We should not assume prehistoric groups behaved exactly the same way, but the pattern makes sense. When movement stops, information moves instead. An older hunter can describe where animals cross after floods. Someone can explain which plants grow after rain. A toolmaker can show a child how to strike stone without shattering it. A story can carry warnings, roots, names, obligations, and memories in a form people will remember. Rain trapped bodies in one place, but it allowed knowledge to travel between minds. That may be one reason caves became more than shelter. Some became places of repeated work, teaching, ritual, art, and memory. Cave paintings were not necessarily made because of rain. We cannot prove that. But creating art deep underground required time, light, planning, and cooperation. Someone carried fuel into darkness. Someone prepared pigment. Someone remembered the shape and movement of an animal well enough to recreate it on stone. Bad weather may not have created art, but long periods indoors created the conditions in which difficult, careful, unnecessary things could happen. And unnecessary is not the same as useless. A painted animal does not keep rain off your skin. A story does not dry your firewood. A song does not fill your stomach. Yet these things help a group remain a group. They keep children calm. They preserve memory. They turn waiting into meaning. So when ancient humans faced a week of rain, they did not do one thing. They protected the fire. They repaired shelter. They shaped tools. They twisted fiber. They processed hides. They cleaned bedding. They rationed food. They taught skills. They told stories. Then, when the storm finally weakened, they stepped outside into a landscape that had changed. The river had moved. The tracks were new. Some food had vanished. Other food had appeared. And the people who had used the waiting time well were ready. That is the part modern life makes easy to miss. We think progress happens when people are moving, hunting, traveling, building, escaping danger. But some of the most important human work may have happened when movement was impossible. Inside a dark shelter, beside a fragile fire, with rain making the entire world smaller, the storm forced people to stop. And instead of becoming helpless, they used the pause to sharpen the tools, repair the bonds, and carry the knowledge that would keep them alive when the world opened again. Ancient humans did not survive endless rain because they were stronger than the storm. They survived because they learned how to make waiting useful.